move on. Let me go ahead and minimize some of these open tests. But we're going to move on to get user projects. Okay. So I am going to go ahead and say get user projects. And then I'm going to take a look. Okay. So it looks like we are first getting a user from the user ID. And then we are getting the projects from the projects service. And then we are returning an object with the user and the projects in it. All right, so it should return an object with the user data and their projects, excuse me, sorry, when passed a user ID. Sync. All right. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to first take a look at what methods that this is calling. So the first thing it's calling is it's getting the user profile data, and then it's getting the user projects. So I'm going to go and take a look at this project service. And so it's just getting the projects, features, user stories, and tasks. And then it's adding the project statuses to those projects. Excuse me. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to say const user ID is equal to 15. All right, the next thing that we want to do is we're going to want to mock the user that we get back, and we're going to want to mock the projects that we get back. Because we've already tested get profile data and we've already tested get user projects and they work. So we don't need to really worry about testing those. We're just testing that this function is going to take the user ID and then call these two functions and then pass something that looks like this back. Okay. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go to the get profile data test here. All right, and then I'm going to get this returning user. All right, and that is what's going to come out. Then I'm going to go to my project service spec, and I'm going to find where we use that get user projects function. And I'm going to steal the data that comes from it. I'm hoping this is it. All right, that's create projects. Here, let me minimize it. Get project by ID. We are close. I can feel it. All right. And that's projects with statuses. So I'm assuming this is, get user projects. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to steal this projects with status object. And I'm going to put it here. All right. I am going to then take a look. All right, so that looks good. So I'm going to minimize it then. All right, so now we can go ahead and mock the calls to the get profile data and get user projects. Okay. So we're going to say user service dot. All right, so we're actually supposed to mock this one here, the user service, not the returning user. That was silly of me. So we actually want to do this here. I'll show you in a second what I mean. All right, so user service dot find user by ID dot mock resolved value user. So basically what's going to happen, if I can type things correct, we're going to pass the user ID to this get profile data. All right. This is going to then pass the ID to the user service find user by ID. So what we're mocking is what returns from that method, which is user. Okay. Then the function should return this to us, which would be saved in this user. All right. Next, what we want to do is we want to mock project service dot get user projects, and then we're going to pass in the user ID. Okay, or we're not passing it in. I'm like, don't know what's happening in my brain right now. Mock resolved value, and the resolved value is going to be projects with statuses. Okay, so that's what we want to come out of this projects. All right, so argument of type is not assignable to the parameter of type project array. I'm confused because that's not what returns from here. So let's take a look. So yeah, what returns from here is going to be the projects with statuses. Yeah, I'm confused as to why. So what if I just did, is that gonna then, oh, that does make it better. All right, so yeah, I'm just gonna change this, which is bad because honestly, there is a specific type that comes out of it, which is this. But I'm gonna just say promise any for now, so that way we can get rid of that TypeScript error. Excuse me. All right, so then we want to say const result is going to be equal to await service dot get user projects, and then we will pass in the user ID. We then expect that our result is going to equal an object with the user with user comma projects equals projects with statuses. All right, let's run the test and see if that works. And it did not. All right. So it looks like, because we're not, user is going to be equal to, all right, email, it's going to be user.email, name is going to be user.name, and username is going to be user.username. All right, that should be correct. Perfect. All right, because what I did basically is like, this is what comes out of the user service find user by ID button, but it's not what gets returned by get profile data. This is what gets returned. So now that that's fixed, that works. All right, so now let's let's write our other expect statements. So we expect users service dot find user by ID to have been called. And then we expect project service dot get user projects to have been called. We expect that users service dot find user by ID to have been called with, and what should that be called with? I think just the ID, right? Yeah. User ID. And then we expect project service dot get user projects to have been called with. Then let's take a look. the user ID again. All right, now let's rerun the tests and see how we do. Perfect. All right, so now we can go ahead and move on to our next one, which is going to be Git project. All right, so I am going to, it already looks like we are using this projects get project service get user projects function. So I'm going to copy the projects with statuses because that's what's going to come back out of that. And then I'm going to start writing my test. Okay, so we're going to say get project and should return a project Okay, so the reason why I'm kind of stuck in thought here is because I feel like I'm doing this in a very like silly way. So I'm gonna go take a look at this to see if I want to refactor it because I'm already getting the projects. I'm curious if it would be better to just make a Git project, right? So we already have a Git project ID here, but I feel like couldn't we add, can we add where ID and like, can I do something like that? User, no. All right, I will look into, that is a refactoring thing and not something to look into right now. So we can go ahead and look into that later. But I don't love the way I did this at the time. I think it's a make it work, but I definitely think there's a make it better that we could use type ORM directly to do this. But we're not gonna worry about it. Should return a project corresponding to a project ID and user ID. All right, so the first thing that we want to do is our inputs. So we're going to say const user ID is equal to, let's say 15. Let's say const ID is equal to, let's say 1. Then we want to have what our projects with statuses is going to be, and it's going to be here. So let's go ahead and make sure that a project ID 1 is there. Yep. All right, so then we are going to start our like mocking here. So we're going to say that projects service dot get user projects dot mock resolved value is going to be projects with statuses. Okay, that's what's going to come out here and go into projects. All right, then we're going to be filtering, we're finding the project that matches this specific ID, and that's what we're testing. So we're not mocking anything with that. At that point, we're just going to call the function and let it do its thing. So const result is equal to await service dot get project, and then we will pass in the user ID and the ID. All right, and then we expect that the result to equal projects with statuses at 0, because that is this first one, which is ID 1. All right, I hope that works, but we will see and edit from there. Whoop, whoop. And it does work. So now let's add our additional expect statements about what we mocked. So project service dot get user projects. We expect that method to have been called, and we expect project service dot get user projects to have been called with user ID. All right, let's rerun our tests here. And yay, we're passing. All right, so that is going to get us through Git project. All right, let's go to update project. All right, This one hopefully isn't going to be too bad because we already tested the project service update project. So we're pretty much just testing that this function is calling this one. All right. So we're going to say it update project. Should update project name. I'm going to just say that. That's fine. I'm feeling a little bit lazy in my naming of tests at this point. All right, so let's do our input. So we're going to say const field is equal to name. Const value is equal to, let's say, Jane Doe. And then const user ID is equal to 15. And then const project ID is equal to 1. Okay? We're updating the project name, not the username. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at what update project does. So first it finds the project to update. Then it updates it. And then it returns the get project by ID. So let's take a look at returns get project ID and adds the statuses. All right, so basically what we're doing is we would take one of these projects here and we would say that we're going to mock this update project response here. So we're going to say projects service dot update project, and then we are going to dot mock resolved value, and let's go ahead and figure that out. So we're going to say const updated project is equal to, and then we're going to use this object here, and you can see that the updated project here will have, let's say, updated project 1, and then we want this to be updated project 1. All right, so I think that works. And then all right, so ID 1, let's shrink features. All right, so now let's do projects service dot update project, and then we're going to say dot mock resolved value, and then we're going to mock it with updated project. All right. All right. It's mad at me. Is it because, so feature, user story, task, what does it want returned? Promise, project, but that's not true anyway. So let's do project any for that one too, which should fix that. Okay, so then we should be able to actually call and get our result, right? So const result is equal to await service dot update project, and then we will pass in our field value, user ID, and project ID, and then we expect result to equal updated project. All right, let's give it a try. And whoop, whoop, we passed it. That's awesome. All right, so then the next thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and copy this test. And honestly, I'm kind of conflicted because it doesn't actually matter what we're changing because we're mocking the updated change. We're just expecting that it's called. So the most important test is not really the result. It kind of is because we want to show that nothing else is happening after it's just directly returning it. But we also want to say that projects service dot update projects, we expect that it has been called, and we expect that projects service dot update project to have been called with field value, user ID, and project ID. All right, so now let's rerun this. And then what I'm thinking is that we can actually get it passed. We can actually change this, should update a project, a field on a project with a new value. All right. We don't have to test out the other ones because we're just mocking it, and the actual update project method of project service does do that. All right, so I think we're gonna end the video here, and when we come back, we will start up with delete project. See you in a little bit.